One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
You know, my mom would have a series of things I could get in trouble for: my tone of voice, being lazy, watching TV, been caught doing a number of things like that.
Would sometimes there be punishment for things that you didn't know what you had done wrong?
Yes.
And you talked before about your mother's tantrums or rages. Did your mother have tantrums or rages?
Yes.
And how far back do you remember seeing that kind of behavior by your mother?
Since I can remember.
And did those rages stop at some point in time?
No.
Did they get worse as time went on? Say
Yes.
And what would she be like when she was in a rage?
She would just be completely out of control, screaming, grabbing things off counters and shelves and breaking them, throwing things around the house. Sometimes come after you, sometimes run away. Just a complete explosion.
What did she look like when she was in these rages?
Just completely tense and
You just
ready to, explosion is the only word I can think, just ready to really, like she's trying to hold back and is not able.
You keep making a gripping motion with your fists.
Yeah, she would use her fists against you, and her veins would bulge out and her face would clench, and her arms would flail, and she would just be out of control, and she'd be running around, and you'd just be either hiding or I just stood there and not move. Sometimes Erik would run out of the room.
Would she say things when she was in these rages? In the Muncie house when she would go into these rages, do you remember the things she would say?
Yes.
What would she say?
She would say that you're a bastard, you ruined her life, you're ungrateful. How can you use that tone of voice with me and clean up after you all day? Wait till your dad gets home. I'm going to tell him how lazy you've been today. You're a terrible boy.
Would she use that tone of voice?
No.
Would she speak louder than that?
She'd speak louder, and my mother cursed a lot.
Was it frightening?
It was terrifying, and it was confusing.
Why was it confusing?
You just didn't know why. You'd just explode constantly. You'd just be walking around the house like this because my mother could go off like that, and you could be hurt. She could throw things at you. Sometimes she'd grab me when I was little and hold me on the ground in awkward positions. Grab me upstairs and put me underneath her bed. You just never knew what was going to happen, so you were just scared, and you were just tense.
You say she would put you under your bed, under her bed. Would this be a punishment?
I don't know if you use the word punishment. These were just, she did these things on a regular basis when she exploded, and one of them was putting me under the bed.
How long would you be under the bed?
Till before my dad came home.
So would this happen just a few minutes before your dad would come home, or would it
No, I'd
happen?
be under there for all afternoon, early evening.
What was it like underneath the bed?
It was claustrophobic. It was only about this high, and I just had enough room to get under, and
Could you turn over?
You couldn't turn over, no. And the ferret went to the bathroom all under there, so the whole area was never cleaned. So it was like a urine smell. And it was terrible, and that's why she put me there. And
Did this happen more than once?
this happened often.
Did your mom help you with your homework?
Yes.
Did she help your brother with his homework?
Mostly my brother.
What would it be like when she was helping Erik with his homework? And are we talking about Muncie now, your memories, or Pennington?
Pennington.
Okay. Well, tell me what it was like when your mom was helping Erik with his homework.
She was in a rage again.
How would they be doing it? I mean, would she be writing his homework for him, or helping him, or explaining things to him patiently? What would she be doing?
He'd be writing, and she would just be watching like this. And as soon as he made a mistake, she'd take the paper and she'd go, "God, do it again! Do it again!" And then my brother would just be like this, and he would go over and write again. She would wait like about 10 seconds. And she'd grab the thing again, and she'd just crumple it up, and she'd slam it down again, and then she'd just start hitting. And just on the back of the head and his back, and he was supposed to keep writing. And I remember one time my dad walked in, and I don't think he had any idea that sometimes that these things were going on in the house, because he was in shock. And he just was in shock. And my brother looked at him and he was crying, and I told him later that you got to do something for my mom. Because she was out of control.
What'd your dad say?
He said to just avoid her, and that she was not a rational person. Just avoid her. And that's what I did.
Did she ever time Erik when he was doing his homework?
Objection vague as to time.
Well, the question was ever.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Where do you remember seeing her time Erik?
He worked usually on the table in the living room.
Which house are we in?
In Pennington. And she walked around with a stopwatch, like the swimming stopwatches that we used to use and no longer did. And I wasn't sure exactly what they were doing, but she would time, and she would say, "Time's up." And then she would check all the answers and see how many he got right. And they would just go back and forth like this.
And what would happen if he got some wrong?
I don't remember. I tried not to be in the room when these things happened.
This happened once or more than once?
This happened every day that he had school.
She helped Erik with his homework more than she helped you with your homework, I take it.
My dad didn't want her wasting time helping me with my homework. He just told her to do it. And then I go play tennis and practice and train or do my running or whatever.
So did she do your homework?
Yes.
How did you feel about what was happening to your brother when you would watch her working with him?
I felt helpless and like I wanted my dad to do something. And sorry for him.
Did your mom seem strange to you?
Vague.
Roll.
She was very strange.
And were there times when she would engage in what looked like meaningless activity?
Overall.
There were times when she was, it seemed like she was just off in another world. She would not respond to you. She would just be like sprawled out on the floor, rearranging marbles, rubber bands, putting cards together, taking them out, making them into different stacks, and then put them all back in the drawer. There was a little drawer off the kitchen that she had all these things in. Sometimes she would be playing with dirt in the, it was like she was repotting the plants again and again, but she was just gone. She wasn't there.
Was this in the Muncie house or the Pennington house?
This happened throughout in Muncie. It got very, very bad in Pennington. There were a lot of other, it wasn't just that type of state. She would be in different kinds also, but it would get worse. And then in Calabasas, it seemed to me to be even worse. And I wasn't there as much, and my brother was calling me, telling me what was going on. And then it seemed to be less open, and sort of, I don't know, I didn't see it as much.
Let me go back to some of her earlier behavior. You referred to Calabasas, which is one of the later houses. You had a pet ferret. You had a series of them, is that correct?
Yes.
And would something happen with regard to hunting for the ferret?
Looking for the ferret, my mom would just, the ferret ran loose in the house and had no cage, and my mom would just get these panic attacks that the ferret was missing, and then she'd just come into wherever you are and say, the ferret is missing, the ferret is missing, and she'd make you go outside and look all through the woods and the surrounding area, and don't come back without the ferret. Including my dad, she would tell this to. And
Would your dad go look for the
he
ferret?
would go look because she was serious. And sometimes I got woken up in the middle, after I was already asleep, the lights would come on because the ferret was missing, and we would go out and look. And sometimes we would find him. And other times, most of the times, he was just in the house somewhere, and she'd find him inside the couch, like in the stuffing underneath or somewhere else.
Would your
We
mom?
would search for hours and all evening.
Would your mom go with you on the searches?
No, she would stay in the house in case the ferret showed up.
Was she very attached to the ferret?
I think she was very attached to the ferret.
And did one of the ferrets die and have something unusual happen to it?
Yes,
What happened?
the ferret died, and she had it stuffed, and then she had it stuffed on a little log, and then put it on the TV set so that she could always see it.
Did your mother ever do anything violent to you in these rages?
Yes.
Can you tell me?
Lots of violent things.
What are the earlier violent things you remember? Do you remember any violent things from the Muncie house?
Just beating me with her hands and kicking me on the ground, and dragging me by the hair down to my room, which my dad did sometimes that way also. And she would just throw me in the room, and she was much bigger than me. She just would kick me on the ground when she was having these rages. I would just defend myself until she left. And then in Pennington, she'd throw things at you. One time, she chased me around the house with one of the kitchen knives, and didn't actually get me. But
What would
Yes,
happen
ma'am.
when you were thrown in your room? Would you be in your room for a long period of time?
thrown in my room in Muncie
Yes.
I would be in my room for all day, and then, which was part of the problem because I was supposed to have a schedule, and if my mom punished me and put me in the room, then I couldn't keep the schedule. So my dad would come home and be furious.
What would you do about food when you were in the room? Would she bring you food?
I don't remember, she may have.
What did you do when you had to go to the bathroom?
I went to the bathroom in the room, either out the window, and she gave me like a Tupperware. It was more like one of those hospital vomiting things. I kept it under the bed, and that's what I used if I need to go to the bathroom.
Was there an incident in which you had a rabbit that you brought home from school?
Yes,
How old were you?
it was the end of second grade. I don't know, maybe 7.
End of second grade? And did you bring the rabbit home?
Yeah, they gave away all the animals at the end of the year, and I managed to be able to get the rabbit. So they gave it to me in a box, and I brought it home, and I put it with. I tried to keep a lot of the animals I caught in the house for short periods of time, like I had a turtle, and so on. And so I put the rabbit in the empty aquarium that didn't have anything in. And I showed it to my mom.
What'd your mom say?
She liked it.
Did she subsequently tell you to get rid of the rabbit?
Yes.
And did you?
Actually, it was my mom said that my dad wanted me to get rid of the rabbit.
So were you supposed to find it a new home or something? Or just get
He
rid of
didn't
it?
care. She just said, Dad just wants you to get rid of it, so give it away. Or I couldn't take it back because school was out, so just give it away or let it go.
And did you do that? Did you give it away or let it go?
No.
And sometime later, did something happen to the rabbit?
Yes.
How much later after you were told to get rid of the rabbit?
A couple days, I was basically hoping that they would change their mind with the rabbit, and then I noticed it was missing, and so I got very nervous, and I went to my mom and asked her where the rabbit is, and she said, well, you were supposed to get rid of it, so you have to talk to your dad. And I went into my dad, and he wouldn't answer me, and so I started to get very upset and basically say, Dad, tell me where the rabbit is. And I thought he let it go, and he told me that I was supposed to get rid of it and that it was in the garbage.
Did you go check the garbage?
Yes.
What did you find?
He had beaten it to death, and it was just laying on top of the garbage, and there were flies. So I took it off, and we found one of the shoe boxes for it, and I put it in the shoe box. And I got my brother, and we went out back to where we played with the army men, and I brought all my stuffed animals with me, and we buried it.
Was there a time where you upset your mother as she was preparing dinner and she cut herself?
Yes.
How old were you?
11.
What happened after she cut herself?
It was by the glass door, and I think I said her name, and she was doing something in the kitchen, and she cut her hand, and she ran over, and she pushed me against the glass, and she rubbed her hand in my face, and said, see what you did to me?
Did she get blood on you?
Oh yeah, her hand was a mess, and my face was a mess, and I ate dinner that way.
Why did you eat dinner that way? Why didn't you wash it off?
I went to wash it off. She said, no, just leave it. Just eat. And I thought I was going to have to go to school like that, but by the end of the evening, she let me wash it off.
Was your dad home?
No, these things wouldn't happen if my dad was home.
Did you get sent to summer camp for sports when you were little?
A couple times.
Did you like going?
I hated going to summer camp.
Why?
I miss my brother. I just was not used to being away from home. I was not used to other people. And suddenly I was with all these other boys and adults, and I didn't want to be there.
How old were you when you were sent to summer camp?
I went once when I was, I think, 8 or 9, about 8 or 9, to a soccer camp, and then I went to a tennis camp, the Ron Holmberg camp, for just a couple days.
When you went to soccer camp, were you homesick?
Very homesick, and so were all the other kids.
Did you call home?
We called home on the, this was a soccer camp where every minute was allotted for, and we had specific, like, half hour where we could call home, and I always called home.
And what would you say to your parents when you called home?
I would cry and tell them I don't want to be there, and tell Dad to come get me. I always talked to my mom, and she would tell me that I was there and I was staying, and got to be like the end of the week, and then Mom told me I was staying another week, and I guess they paid week by week, and so I really told her that I didn't want to be there and I wanted to come home. And police put Dad on the phone, and I'll tell him why and so on. She told me to stop crying. Dad doesn't want to come to the phone, and so I had one argument with her about it, hysterical, and then the next day I called.
What happened?
And
Did you call? Did you pay for the calls, or did you have to call collect?
I didn't have any money. I called collect.
What happened when you called?
She didn't accept the call.
Could you hear her voice?
Yes.
Could you hear her refuse to accept your call?
Yes.
And did you try and call her again?
Yeah, I called every day.
She ever accept the call?
Never.
How'd that make you feel?
I was just I'm embarrassed, and I went every day, even though I knew that this was going to happen. And I just kind of hung by the phone like I was talking on the phone too. I wouldn't say anything, and all the other boys, because they would talk about if he had called home and things like, you know, they would just be saying that they talked to their dad or this was happening. I didn't want to tell them that my mom didn't want to talk to me.
Was this time difficult for you? This time in Muncie, when you were living in Muncie, was life difficult for you at home?
That was the worst period of my life.
And when you moved to Muncie, did things continue to be difficult?
With regard to my mom, they became much more difficult.